Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. The first story for this collection is from Responsible-Beach 452. AITA for refusing to give my Molester brother a character letter to help his court trail after what he did to a friend's daughter. I, 28F, have a brother, 31M, who is looking at serving time in prison for intimate relations with a minor, 14F, who is one of my friend's daughter. This has been going on for months, as evidence states, and we only found out a few weeks ago. When I found out about this, I had a discussion with my friend and apologized for what happened, but understandably, she wants space. I have also cut off my brother, as this whole situation is just disgusting to me. My parents, however, have stayed by his side and are trying to say the only reason he did what he did is because he has autism and didn't know what he was doing was wrong. Despite them being shown text messages where he states himself that what he was doing was bad and he could be sent to prison for it. However, after they spoke to my brother's lawyer, he stated that we could each write up a character letter to be presented for him in court so the judge can have better understanding of who is beside the incident, but I refused because I don't think he deserves it. I am currently 6 months pregnant, and I don't want my daughter to be around/grow up with a man like my brother. I've spoken to my husband about this for another opinion, and he agrees with me not submitting a character letter. But we are thinking of talking to the children that my brother was around in the family, just to make sure that he hasn't done anything to them. My mother is dying, and she says she doesn't want to pass while her son is serving time in prison for something, in her words, that wasn't that bad. Both her and my father are pressuring me to do this, and seeing them so upset is hard for me. But whenever I even think about doing it, makes me sick. I just wanted to ask for everyone else's opinion on what I should do. I and my brother were extremely close up until this point, which I think is making this harder for me. Should I cut out my parents too? Should I make the letter? Edit. Hello everyone again. I have no idea how to make updates that lets everyone know the same time. But I'll keep it short. I wish I could reply to all comments, but I'm so tired all the time, I have no energy for it. And I really don't want to keep stressing myself out with the pregnancy, but I have read so many, and thank everyone for their responses. I have cut off my parents because I 100% do not support anyone who enables rapists, and that's who they are. Sadly. It was hard because I did want my baby to grow with 2 sets of grandparents, but I still have my husband's parents, so I'll be okay eventually with this huge loss. I am also not writing a letter, even if it is to say how terrible I think the situation is. I just want to cut everyone off and focus on my husband and my baby. OP is certainly not an AH, and what she did is 100% justified. She is absolutely right in standing against her brother, who is a molester, and her parents who are enabling his actions. OP and people like her are the beacons of hope in our hypocritical society. If someone else had done such a mean thing, OP's parents would have been on the streets chanting for strict consequences. However, when it came to their own son, they put the blame on autism, despite knowing the facts that their son did all this on purpose. RIP American values. As for scores, I would give OP 0 and OP's brother 5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP's parents are also AHs, so I would give them 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Logical Blueberry 5. AITA for moving on so quickly after my husband left me. My 47F husband, 47M, asked for a separation on our 14th anniversary while we were away in a foreign country to celebrate. While we weren't as close as we used to be, we almost never fought and generally enjoyed each other's company and families. We do not have any children. The night before our anniversary, he brought up he wasn't very happy in the relationship, but didn't know why. The next morning, I asked to see his phone, and he said no. He said I would find flirty messages with 1 or more other women on it. He had made some female friends through school and work, and he said he felt like there might be someone out there who was a better fit for him. I said I did not want to do a trial separation, as I don't believe you can work on something if you aren't living together. If he wanted to separate, it would be final. He understood, but said it was something he had to do. After being away for only 2 days, we rebooked our flights home, flew home, and he packed some belongings and left. 7 days later, he asked to come home, and we started marriage counseling. He had a lot of trouble admitting he had at least one emotional affair. The counseling was not helpful. He was defensive and not open to it. I suspect something physical happened with the other woman, but I do not have any proof. He had deleted all his flirty texts, Snapchat, etc., so I could not see them. After 4 weeks of living together again and attending counseling sessions, he decided he no longer wanted to try to save the marriage, and he was leaving. He packed up and left a few hours later. He stayed with a friend, found a new apartment, and signed a 1-year lease. I was devastated, and even had to take time off work to process what had happened and attend individual counseling. After 4 weeks, I started to feel a bit better. I went out for drinks with a group of 4 co-workers that live in my area and found I really enjoyed one of them, 42M, a lot. I had only met him over Zoom before this. We started seeing each other a couple of times a week. Quite quickly, it grew into a truly amazing, loving relationship. I've stayed in counseling throughout, as it wasn't easy to process the sudden ending of my long-term marriage at the same time as beginning something new. It's been about 7 months now. My ex-husband eventually decided he wanted to try to save the marriage again, but I declined. He says I'm TA for starting a new relationship so quickly, within 6 weeks of him leaving. Our relationship was over as I can no longer trust him, and he has hurt me immensely. I do not want a relationship with someone I cannot trust. Am I TA for moving on? Update. I am not sure how to provide an update, so I hope this is right. The biggest update is that my ex-husband, 48M, and I, 47F, are finally officially divorced. We split everything equally, and I bought him out of the family home. Thankfully, the divorce process was quick and easy once we waited the mandatory separation period for our state. When signing the divorce papers, he asked if I was sure I wanted to proceed, notably while he was seeing someone else. He wanted to try again, if I was willing. I wasn't, and thankfully he didn't fight it or make the divorce process more difficult in any way. My ex has been seeing this woman for quite a while now. I know he knew her before we split, but I do not know if he cheated with her or not. It doesn't matter to me. I wish them the best. My relationship with my new partner, 42M, has continued to be amazing. It's the best relationship I've ever been in, and I can honestly say I've never been happier. He is kind, loving, and a great communicator. We moved in together a while back, and a few months later, we became engaged. We plan to elope sometime in the next year. While it may seem crazy, I am extremely grateful for my ex's cheating and the following heartbreak. Without it, I may not have found the happiness I have today. OP is certainly not an AH for moving on quickly, because she has every right to seek happiness for herself. There is nothing wrong with it. On the other hand, OP's husband seems to be a weird person for being so volatile. One day, he wants separation, and the next moment he wants to try again. I don't understand. What the heck is this? To me, he is an AH, and I would give him 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. Let's now jump on to the next story from technical_pressure13. AITA, for asking a woman to quit touching me? Recently, I visited my local bar/restaurant, where I've been going about once every 2 weeks for dinner and drinks over the past 2 years. While I'm not a regular, the staff and some patrons recognize me and often come to chat. I'm not the best looking guy, but I work hard at the gym and take care of myself. On my last visit, I was sitting alone at the bar, engrossed in my phone, when a woman, early 40s, sat down beside me. Initially, I didn't pay much attention to her until she asked if I was going to talk to her or just stare at my phone all night. I was caught off guard and apologized, explaining I didn't realize she wanted to chat. She then asked me to buy her a drink, which I declined because I have a fiancé, and told her that would be inappropriate. After walking away, she returned and started rubbing my shoulders. I pulled away and asked what she was doing. She claimed I looked tense and was just trying to help. I brushed it off, thinking she might have had a few drinks. However, she continued to touch my arms and even my beard while getting close to my face. I politely asked her to stop, emphasizing that it made me uncomfortable, especially considering I have a fiancé. She apologized and said she would stop, but about 20 minutes later, she came back and grabbed my upper thigh while trying to move her hand to my privates. In response, I scooted my seat back and said, somewhat loudly to ensure the bartender heard, "I asked you nicely to please not touch me, so quit touching me." I didn't mean to sound aggressive, just firm. After that, I decided to cash out and leave. A couple of weeks later, I returned for my usual dinner and drinks. As soon as I walked in, the regulars fell silent. The bartender was short with me and slid the menu my way without saying a word. I thought he was just having a bad night. Then, a gentleman approached me and said it was messed up how I treated the woman weeks before. I was shocked and asked him to clarify. He said I shouldn't have raised my voice at her for accidentally brushing up against my arm. I tried to explain my side, but it felt like no one was listening. I noticed the atmosphere had shifted, and I felt completely iced out at my favorite spot. As I left, I overheard a couple of people muttering, "asshole" and "scumbag." Now I'm wondering, am I the asshole in this situation? I don't think I can go back after this, and I really don't understand what I did wrong. OP is not the AH for setting his boundaries. The woman is an AH for touching OP repeatedly in public and without OP's permission. Consent is a must for touching someone. OP's reaction is appropriate and justified. So, OP is not an AH, and I would give him 0 out of 5 on the AH scale, and that woman gets at least 2.5 on the AH scale. One more thing is that the negative reaction from the bar staff is unfair and unjustified. So, the bar staff are also AHs, and I would give them 3.5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Captain C00TS. AITA, for telling my brothers I won't be the one to be our mom's caretaker. I'm one of 3 boys. I'm 35, and my brothers are 26 and 23. It started when the 26-year-old asked who is going to take care of our mom when she's nearing the end of her life. I stayed quiet because I have an extremely strained relationship with our mom. When I was 14, my mom cheated on my dad with his best friend, and she kicked him out of the house she inherited from my grandparents. She was a drug addict, had her car repossessed, couldn't pay her bills, so I was doing homework in candlelight and taking cold showers. I got beaten one time because I found her drugs and flushed them down the toilet in front of her. During my junior and senior years, she was dating different guys, leaving at night when we were all asleep, and then coming home in the morning after I was awake, getting ready for school, and getting my brothers ready for school. She would always say, I had to run to the store really quick, but I would be awake in the middle of the night when she would leave. My mom is clean now, but she's a functioning alcoholic. She put my dad into massive credit card debt, leading up to their split due to her drug problems. Neither of my parents have retirement savings. My mom still works at 65 years old as a hairdresser. She is going to have to continue working until her arms and legs won't let her anymore. My brothers have extremely rose-tinted glasses for their childhood. They thought it was amazing. They remember me always hanging out with them, letting them sleep in my room, playing video games, taking them to get lunch and stuff. They didn't see all of the stuff that was going on with our mom because they were too young. They know about everything now, but they don't hold the same resentment for our mom that I do. Because of my strained relationship with my mom, I got a vasectomy. My wife and I don't want kids because we don't want another life to be our responsibility. I've had my fair share of raising kids with my brothers. So when I finally told them we don't have any obligation to take care of our parents, they made their decisions and have to deal with them. And if they can't financially take care of themselves, that's their problem. I even said, whoever wants to move in with mom and take care of her can have the house after she dies. I will help by taking her to the grocery store, making sure she has things she needs, but I won't take care of her. They called me cold and selfish, and that they knew I didn't have that caretaker mentality. I love my brothers. They are 2 of the most important people in the world to me, but our mom has been exhausting to have in my life. Am I the asshole because I refuse to take care of my mom when she needs end-of-life care? This post is long, and I feel like I jumped all over the place. I'm sorry. Update. I sent my brothers this text to tell me I don't have that caretaker instinct when I took care of you guys growing up. Even after I moved out, I bought you guys school clothes and stuff. I was there while mom was off messing around in the middle of the night. I was there taking care of you when you woke up crying because mom wasn't home, and I sat with you while you fell back asleep. I woke you guys up in the mornings to help you get ready for school. I stayed with you guys while mom and sissy were doing drugs. I watched you over weekends. I fed you lunches and dinners. I let you guys sleep in my room when we didn't have power because mom couldn't afford the electric bill. I was the only one with a car in the family, and I took you guys to and from school while also dropping mom off at work and picking her up while going to college and working. I did my part in taking care of her. I helped raise you guys, but you don't see it that way because you were too young. I had to grow up way too fast, so please don't make me feel guilty because I don't want to be mom's caretaker When I feel like I did my part when I was younger taking care of you guys for her. If it was either of you needing caretaking, that's a different story. I parented you guys growing up. I was there a lot when our parents weren't. I love you guys, and I don't hold you guys responsible, and I would do it all over again if I needed to. This was the 26-year-old's response. I am not trying to make you feel guilty, and wasn't trying to say you didn't take care of us. I shouldn't have said you don't have the caretaker instinct. I was thinking of it in a parental aspect, since you literally said you don't have a kid because you don't want responsibility for anyone else. I wasn't trying to make it sound like you didn't take care of us, and they left it at that. I'm going to stand my ground. I think I'll also have this conversation with my mom to let her know. My 23-year-old brother is her favorite and perfect son. He has the best relationship with her and still lives with her. And he said he's already accepted he's probably the one who is going to take care of her. But the next time the three of us are in the same place, we will sit down and have a real conversation about why I won't be the caretaker. But I'm willing to talk about other solutions. Thank you all for the amazing responses. I probably will seek out therapy. I've never heard of prettification and probably do have a lot of things I need to work out. Thank you all. OP is not the AH. Given his traumatic upbringing, he has already taken on immense responsibility raising his brothers and managing his mom's neglect. His decision to prioritize his well-being and set boundaries regarding future care is valid. It's reasonable for OP to expect other family members to step up now, given the circumstances. So, OP is not an AH here, and I would rate him 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP's brothers are being AHs here, and I would rate each of them 1.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story form, Katie's _ 1156-222. AITA for ruining my best friend's wedding? My husband Mark and I were together for 4 years before I found out he was cheating on me. Everything was perfect, and then one evening he sat me on the sofa and told me about his affair. I could not believe it. I just got up and packed my stuff. I drove straight to my best friend Amy's house. We have been best friends since we were 5. I told her everything that happened, and she told me I could stay with her as long as I needed since Mark and I lived together, and I needed some time to find a place to move into. When she and her boyfriend Alex announced they were getting married, she asked me if I would be her maid of honor. I'm not going to lie, it was such a stressful time for me as I was working full-time and helping plan this wedding. Don't get me wrong, I felt so honored, but I was exhausted. She told me that she always wanted to have her wedding in a big open field with trees everywhere and around nature, and it so happened that my parents owned a ranch, so I asked if we could throw the wedding there. Obviously, since Amy had been a part of our family for so long, she was like an adopted daughter, so my parents were more than happy to have her wedding there. The evening before the wedding, I was busy putting up some decorations when one of the bridesmaids approached me. I did not know this girl. I think she was a co-worker of Amy's. She walked up to me and told me she was so impressed with me that despite everything, I was still willing to help Amy with her wedding. I was like, sorry. She then went on to tell me that she knew that my best friend Amy had slept with my husband Mark. Just take your mind back to that affair he had been having. In perfect timing, Amy's soon-to-be husband Alex came around the corner. I asked if he knew about this, and he told me that he did, in fact, know. Amy had told him because she didn't want to go through the marriage with any secrets. He said he made a promise to himself that after their honeymoon, he would tell me the truth. He had forgiven Amy and asked me to do the same. I had no clue what to say, so I got into my car and drove to my parents' house and told them everything that happened. They too were absolutely stunned. They couldn't believe it. That afternoon, I got a call from Amy. I got at least 100 more phone calls from her, and then it started with Alex trying to call me, and then it progressed to numbers I didn't even know. I finally found out on Facebook that my parents had thrown their entire wedding off their property. The wedding hadn't even taken place at all, and now Alex and Amy were both bad-mouthing me all over the place. But my parents said they didn't care. Anyone who asked why got the truth, which quickly had people siding with me. But I still get the occasional, it wasn't a big deal. It was a one-time thing, or you're over-exaggerating from our mutual friends. So tell me what you all think. Was I exaggerating? Or should I have handled it better? I don't know. Edit. I have read all of your kind comments and have decided to drop those mutual friends of mine who defended Amy. I am currently healing through this as I have just lost a best friend of 22 years. But don't worry, I have thanked my parents profusely for how they protected me. OP is certainly not an AH for standing up to her friend. In fact, she didn't ruin her friend's wedding. Rather, her friend ruined his life, and after all that, she was being a hypocrite. So, OP is not an AH, and I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Instead, OP's husband and her friend Amy are AHs. Amy is the bigger AH, so I would rate her 4 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP's husband gets 3.5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from I Am Y Vern Girl. AITA for telling my sister I hooked up with her fiancé and ruining her engagement, even though she took him back. I, 19F, come from a super religious family where everyone marries fast through matchmakers. I'm the black sheep because I left religion and started dating casually. My sister Marie, 25F, is the family favorite, beautiful, smart, and outgoing, but she struggled to find a husband. After a string of failed matches, she finally got engaged last month to Christopher, 30M. Everyone was relieved because she'd been trying for so long. I was happy for her, until I met the fiancé. Christopher and I hooked up last year. For context, the age gap between us isn't the issue, so please don't bring it up. We met at a party, and despite being religious, he's divorced and didn't seem concerned about staying pure. We hooked up 5 times. He was my first everything. Kiss, hook up, all of it. After the 5th time, he said he was falling for me, but I wasn't looking for anything serious, so I ended things before it got too complicated. Especially because I knew he wanted to eventually get remarried, and I was not the girl for that. We hadn't seen each other since, until Marie brought him home as her fiancé. The second we locked eyes, I knew we were both thinking, oh sh*. Later that night, Christopher pulled me aside, begging me not to tell Marie. He said it meant nothing, it was in the past, and telling her would only ruin her happiness. He texted and called me for a week, saying how much Marie had been through and how I'd destroy her life if I told her. I kept my mouth shut at first. I didn't want to hurt her. But the guilt was eating me alive, like I was watching her walk into a disaster. I felt like she deserved to know. So, I told her. At first, Marie didn't believe me. She said I was trying to sabotage her happiness because I couldn't stand being single. I had to show her the texts and photos to prove it. When she finally accepted the truth, she lost it. She confronted Christopher, and he denied everything, until she shoved the evidence in his face. Marie called off the engagement. That's when things really hit the fan. My parents and some relatives told me I should have kept quiet. They said I'd ruined Marie's one shot at happiness, and called me selfish for interfering. Now I'm not even invited to the wedding. Yep, they got back together, but I'll get to that. It gets worse. While Marie and Christopher were dating, he randomly called me, saying he wanted to reconnect. He was rather vague, but it was obviously a booty call. I didn't know he was dating at the time, and definitely didn't know he was dating my sister. I let him down firmly, and didn't engage because I had no interest. After telling Marie about our hookup, I mentioned this call because I thought she should know he wasn't as faithful while they were dating as she thought he was. But that backfired spectacularly. Marie accused me of making up lies to tear them apart. Christopher denied everything and said I was obsessed with him. Marie sided with him and called me, quote, a desperate home-wrecking whore. Since I deleted my call history, I had no proof. It became a he said, she said situation, and Marie believed him. Now, Marie and Christopher are back together, and they're getting married. She showed up at my apartment a few weeks after the fight, crying. Apparently, Christopher convinced her that what happened between us was just a meaningless mistake, and that it made him realize how much he wanted to be with her. I tried to explain that he had told me he was falling for me, not to make it seem like he still liked me, just to show her he's lying to her about what he felt for me. But she just got angrier and called me a jealous liar and some other pretty names I won't repeat before storming out. Now I'm completely cut off from family events. My parents say I've caused enough damage, and extended family members are calling me a slut, both behind my back and to my face. Every attempt I've made to explain myself has been shut down. So yeah, they're getting married anyway. And here I am, wondering if I just blew up her engagement for nothing. Should I have just stayed quiet? Did I do the right thing? Or did I just ruin my relationship with my family for no reason? OP is not the AH for telling her sister about the hookup with Christopher. Marie deserves to know the truth about her fiancé, especially given the betrayal. While it's unfortunate that Marie took him back, OP's intention was to protect her sister from future heartbreak. The family's reaction reflects their biases, not OP's actions. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story form, expert_anybody2366 AITA for refusing to take care of my wife since she caught the flu from having sex with her affair partner. This is partially a rant, and partially an actual question. I, 54M, have been married to my wife, Victoria, 54F, for over 32 years. We have 3 adult daughters and 1 adult son. Early this year, she started menopause. I loved her and supported her throughout this difficult time. She said she didn't want to have because she felt like she's fat and ugly. I told her she's beautiful, and I was patient with her as she said she didn't want. It was only since this month that she wanted us to have sex again. I thought things were getting better until I saw a condom wrapper in our bedroom. My job involves going out of town for business trips. This last trip, I tried to get into my wife's social media, and luckily enough, she used someone's birthday as the password. I found out her affair partner is Zachary, 35M, a family friend who has a wife, 29F. So on my trip, I read so many messages. One message involved Zachary asking if it's okay to come over for their fun time since he thinks he's coming down with something. Even after getting back in town, I read some messages. Zachary messaged that he and his wife have the flu, so he can't see my wife for a while. My wife said that herself getting the flu was worth it. I came home to my wife, who's suffering from the flu. I immediately told her that I know about her and Zachary. She was upset but too weak from the flu to stop me from packing and leaving. She begged me to not leave her alone while she's sick. After I left, my wife has been messaging me. She said she's very sick. I told her to go to the doctor, call an ambulance, or call someone else. She said she's not dying, but she needs me. She said she can't call our kids nor any other family member since they'll ask why I'm not there. She said that menopause had made her crazy and that she wouldn't see Zachary anymore. I still haven't gone back. AITA. Edit. As soon as I found the messages, I was planning on telling Zach's wife. I wanted to tell her face to face. I wanted to spare our adult kids the horrible news, but many in the comments made a good point that my wife could lie to our kids. So I called Zach's wife first. I don't know what's going on in their marriage because she believed me right away. I called my kids and talked to them like a conference call. I had to unfortunately send some proof to them. I didn't go overboard, just enough for them to believe me. Obviously, they're all upset. I tried to keep it together, as I don't want to vent about their mother to them. Second edit. Zach's wife has been messaging me last night and this morning. She was planning on leaving Zachary anyway, because Zachary was sleeping with 2 other women. But the fact that Victoria is a married woman who is like a family member speeds things up. Zach's wife made Zachary leave the house. Also, all my kids have called their mother. They're not buying any of their mom's excuses. They all want me to divorce her. OP is certainly not an AH for refusing to take care of his cheating wife. However, OP is a big AH for still being married to his cheating wife. I cannot believe OP is still with his wife because cheating is the ultimate deal breaker in a relationship. Whatever, it's OP's choice. As for scores according to the question asked, OP is not an AH, and I would rate him 0 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP's wife is an AH for expecting her husband to take care of her after doing all this, so I would rate her 4 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next and the last story for this video from Accomplished Rain 9. AITA for telling my dad that he has ruined our family legacy. My parents raised me, 33M, and my sister in Western Canada. But after attending university, both of us have since moved away. I now live in the UK, and my sister lives on the opposite coast of Canada. My dad's family has always been upper middle class, and the centerpiece of his family was an old farmhouse about an hour outside of a major city that my great-grandfather built. This means I was part of the 5th generation to be there. It was modestly sized with 3 bedrooms over 2 floors, not some massive mansion in the countryside. It sat on less than an acre of land. That being said, it's been the family meeting spot for literally generations. My grandparents lived there until they died. This is where my sister and I spent hundreds of days in our childhood. Although my dad's family wasn't excessively wealthy, there was always this idea of preserving something for the next generation to make life a bit easier. My grandfather was generous and helped my parents often but sensibly, made sure that the family money was always growing. He would gift my parents weekends away and similar. My parents also massively benefited from this by having almost 50% of their first home being paid for by my dad's parents. My grandmother passed away, then eventually my grandfather did as well. He passed about 10 years ago now. After he passed away, my parents sold the farmhouse to create a new family meeting spot. At the time, my sister and I both fought this idea, but our parents did it anyway. If I had the funds, I would have bought it from them myself, but I had just left university so had no income. They insisted this would be best for everyone. With the money from this sale, my father retired about 5 years early, and they bought a piece of land on a remote island on one of Canada's many lakes. It's 4 hours from the nearest airport and only accessible by boat and only in the summer. There is no road access, and the lake partially freezes in the winter, which means you can't get there by boat. They built a cabin on this property, and it sleeps 4 people if you pull out the couch. They have been living at the cabin for the warm half of the year, and freeloading at my aunt and uncle's house for the rest. My parents recently asked me for a loan of several $1,000s, which I don't have, to expand their cabin to sleep more people so that we could all be together at the cabin. This idea disgusts me. My father inherited money that has been well cared for literally generations through moderate use, and he's already blown through it less than 10 years later. Between this remote cabin and taking early retirement, he and my mom have managed to use it all, and are now imposing on me to give them more money for a cabin that I will probably never use, as I live in the UK. Going to the old farmhouse was fine before, because it was much closer to an airport, could fit us all, and was accessible year-round. We can't even use this cabin for Christmas. The way I see it, my parents have completely ruined our family legacy because of their greed, and they can't even see it. If I ever have kids, they will never get to experience all the family history at the farmhouse like I did. My sister has a kid on the way, and we've already discussed how sad we are that the kid will never see the house. The idea of helping the next generation has ended with my parents, and this seems selfish to me. I told my parents this, and they told me that I was being entitled and selfish. I have had to work much harder to get where I am than my parents did. I have 2 degrees, have built my career over 3 continents, and have never taken money from my parents unless it was a gift for Christmas or my birthday. I paid my way through university with summer jobs and student loans. My parents both worked simple jobs and never went to university. Neither of my parents advanced their careers and stayed in pretty entry-level positions. I now believe that they've purposefully coasted through life because they knew they could afford to if they used the family money for retirement. AITA. OP is not an AH for expressing frustration over his parents' decisions regarding their family legacy. He has valid concerns about losing a meaningful family tradition and the financial implications of his parents' choices. However, the way he communicated his feelings is rude. So, for OP's behavior, I would rate him 1 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from AITA for exposing my late wife's infidelity to her affair partner's wife. It was a short affair. I had been deployed and was suspicious of a neighbor helping my wife out around the house, lawn, fixing stuff, etc. Way too much for my comfort zone. Then, sometime later, I found out his wife had moved to stay with her parents because he was set to be deployed. Then, at one point, I called her, and she told me she was going out for a girls' night with some friends. I was totally okay with that, but asked if the man in question was going along. And sure enough, he was. I could see the writing on the wall, clear as could be. I told her there and then, if she did anything inappropriate, there would be severe consequences for our marriage. After that, things seemed to go back to normal, and she never mentioned him again. Of course, I found out later he had gone on deployment, so naturally, there would be no more hearing about him. About a month later, I returned home. When I met her at the airport, with kids, she was bawling, and I mean ugly bawling. I thought it was kind of weird but figured I knew why. Seeing bits of evidence here and there and always having that nagging suspicion, I never stopped poking and prodding. She even once said, "If you don't shut up with these questions, you're going to ruin our marriage." Finally, after about 4 months, she confessed in a fit of tears. Without making this an extremely long story, I'll just leave it that I decided on reconciliation, mostly for the kids. We stayed together another 15 years before she passed away. It was a rough 15 years for me as she had issues, many of which likely led to her passing. Really long story. Her guilt, my roller coaster of emotions, etc. I wasn't nice for quite a while. Her cheating destroyed something in me that I still have issues with, even now. She turned me into someone I didn't like for a few years. I was struggling. After she passed, I met my next, now, wife. She's awesome. I met her only a couple of months after my FWW, former wayward wife, passed, and it really irritated me. I had big plans on single life fun, and this awesome lady waltzes into my life, damn it. I now know what having a faithful, worthy, loving wife is all about. We've been together now for 16 years. Wow. How I wish I could have my 15 years of reconciliation with my FWW back. So yes, the whole affair part of the story happened 32 years ago. The longer I'm married to my now wonderful wife, the more I resent my FWW. Nowadays, I'm disgusted I ever met her. I'm disgusted I stayed with her. I'm disgusted with everything associated with her. While I didn't wish for her passing, now I'm happy for the second chance at a happy life. I'd never realized how dirty and unhappy I felt while I was with her. The only good thing I got from her were the kids. I know, harsh, right? Sorry, but that's how it is. So one day, for some reason, I was looking at Facebook and got wondering if my FWW's affair partner and his wife were still together. Sure enough, they were. In fact, it just so happened that she had recently posted, celebrating her anniversary. I sat and read all about how the best decision she ever made was marrying that POS husband of hers. Back in 1992, I was not given the opportunity to expose her cheating husband to her. In 2023, that's exactly what I did. I wrote her a long DM. I apologized first, but said she deserved the truth and figured they could now have the burden I'd carried for decades. Never heard any reaction, don't really care. AITA? OP is an AH here, a big AH. Despite hiding his late wife's affair from others, OP texted a long paragraph to AP's wife after 30 years, revealing their affair. What OP did was totally unreasonable and futile. I don't understand. Why OP didn't do the same when he caught her wife's affair. As for scores, I would rate OP 1.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from mysterious_nebula_96. After 2 years of no contact, my husband's youngest daughter, 15, wants to reconnect to meet our newborn. AITA for refusing? This is a long story with tons of backstory, but I'm really just looking for advice on my particular situation right now. Sorry for the formatting. It's late at night here and I'm with a baby sleeping on me. I've been with my husband for 10 years. For the first 8 years, we were very present in his youngest kid's life. We met them when they were 3M, 5F, and the eldest was 16F. The two young ones are with one ex, and the eldest with another, present as in every weekend at ours, long holidays with us, etc. We were extremely happy together. The ex-mother of the youngest children never liked me, but whatever, the kids were happy, and we were also happy. I thought I couldn't have kids, so I was loving my situation. Right around COVID, we went for full custody as the mother's boyfriend was showing signs of abuse towards the kids and their mother. We were in the courts for 2 years fighting for main custody until one Christmas day when things blew up. I'll try to explain and keep it short because it's not. Months before Christmas, the youngest daughter and the eldest began getting into some really weird behaviors. Even though we were giving the youngest a €100 allowance and paying costs for the eldest, plus all the alimonies, they started behaving like we weren't providing enough. The eldest sister started getting weirdly protective of her sister, and it came out through different times and different drama explosions that the youngest told the oldest we were refusing money and just being mean. This led the oldest sister to start being confrontational about everything. What lunch I was making, how much the clothes I bought them cost, etc. Everything started to become an insult we weren't even aware we were doing until weeks later when someone started crying and screaming. I want you all to understand, we had weekly family meetings to discuss how we felt, weekly therapy sessions, we were all in therapy. I really tried my best with the kids, and I did. I know it's Reddit, and I'm going to be torn a new one, but my husband and I really did all we could. The youngest daughter, aided by the oldest, just really began to spiral, which led to Christmas. Basically, it all started because in our home, we opened the gifts after dinner. The morning began with the eldest and youngest texting me nonstop that they wanted to open the gifts first. I said no. Then they said they'll not come if I don't. And because I was dealing with some serious people-pleasing problems, after a while, I just said yes. But they were still angry. When they arrived, they went straight to open the gifts, and they seemed a bit disappointed. We had dinner, and after, we decided to play a game. When the youngest began whining about not winning a round, I just told her to please let it go so we can continue. This led to the eldest screaming at both of us about how awful we are to the youngest, how cheap we are with our gifts, and how much she hates having to care for her sister. I normally would have taken control of the situation and appeased everyone, but at that moment, something broke in me. The eldest kept on screaming, called their mother, telling her we were mistreating the kids, and packed them up and left, effectively spearheading our court case we spent 2 years on to have the kids out of the house. We were heartbroken, receiving a barrage of texts accusing us of being cheap with them, not putting them first, not making them happy. I shut down completely. Eventually, they made it clear that they wanted nothing to do with us. Shortly after, we got an option to move away from the city and into the countryside. We did. We moved fast. My husband has seen his kids, but I haven't. They've come to visit their grandmother, but very clearly avoided seeing their father or me. I'm very okay with this. I'm happy they don't want me in their lives, because everything just becomes perceived wrongs, and it's just like walking on eggshells all the time. It was just awful. Now fast forward 2 years, we just welcomed our baby boy, and I'm so happy. Of course, my husband has communication with his kids, and they know of him. Now the youngest daughter offered to come to our home for one night to meet our son and to celebrate her birthday. We live in a generational house, meaning we live with grandma in a big house, so there's enough place for her. The problem is, I don't want to. I know my husband does, and I get it, but I've had so much peace. I also don't want my boy to become the subject of conversation in their homes. I don't want her to see my home, my spaces. I know I sound like a monster, but I don't want her holding my baby. I don't want him to be exposed to them. I know this is probably trauma speaking, but I don't want to feel like I have to walk on eggshells again. I also know my husband is a father and don't want to veto this. What would you do? How do I navigate this? OP is not an AH here. Her concerns are 100% justified. OP does not want to expose her newborn to potential family drama, and it is the best choice for her. OP is not an AH here. She has every right to choose peace for her newborn and for herself. So, OP is not an AH here, and I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from glittering-ad-874. AITA for cursing at a customer and telling them we won't sell to them anymore. My husband and I raise our own chickens and sell our eggs locally. A lot of our customers are elderly. This one customer, an older gentleman in his 60s or 70s, came over and didn't come to the front door. Our house security wasn't tripped by the front door camera, but the side camera showed movement, but instead came to our coop to run. No big deal, we were out tending to the flock anyway, even though we don't like people coming near our coops runs due to theft. We spoke briefly, helped him know where we get our feed, and got him eggs, the whole shebang. The first odd aspect of him was that he wanted to buy some of our chickens. All of our chickens were bought either from TSCRK or a local hatchery. Our flock is worth at least $600. And I have one turkey, handsome man, who is my absolute favorite boy in the whole wide world. So suffice to say, I am a protective head hen. A few days later, about midweek while my husband was at work, I let our best girls out, Elsie, our Native American dog, and Sinin, our border collie, to go potty and enjoy their yard. We have an invisible fence that surrounds the coop to deter animals and thieves from reaching our birds. While I was inside doing house chores, the same old man apparently came down the drive and parked in our second driveway that had our posted, "No trespassing private property" signs. I didn't realize he was even here until I heard LC barking at him. I looked out the window, and there he was near our coop, shooing Elsie away with his hand. Elsie stood firm and continued to bark, but kept her body between him and the coop. Realizing she wasn't going to let him near, he started to move towards the front, with Elsie taking small steps towards him each time, but never actually advancing on him or closing the distance. There was always at least 7 feet between them. Once he got to the porch, my daughter answered the door to tell him that we didn't have any eggs to sell. We were sold out. And at this time, my border collie Sinin realized that a visitor was here. She came out of her hiding spot and barked a few times, but she's a loving little girl who loves pets and people. She's not for protection, but she's our first warning system because she barks. This man then grabbed my broom that I keep outside to sweep our porch and advanced on my dogs, swinging at them and trying to hit them. I instantly reacted, yelling at him to not hit my dogs and to get the heck off my property, and told him he wasn't welcome here, nor would we sell our eggs to him anymore. So, AITA? TLDR. Suspicious man comes when he thinks no one is home. My husband's truck wasn't in the driveway. Goes near our precious flock, but our best girls stop him. He tries to hit them for doing their job. OP is not an AH here. Her aggressive behavior towards the customer is 100% justified. The old man tried to enter OP's property without permission and attempted to attack her dog, despite knowing that they no longer sell eggs. So, as for the scores, I would rate the customer 3.5 out of 5, and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's move on to the next story, from Visible-Broccoli-381. AITA for breaking up with my fiancé for telling her best friend she was not engaged, my now ex-fiancé, 30F, and I, 27M, got engaged 3 weeks ago. We've been dating for 5 years, and I finally got the money to give her the wedding she wanted. Well, 3 days ago, we were discussing our guest list, and I asked if she wanted to invite her best friend, let's call him James, 30M. James lives in another state, but since they were friends for 10 years, I thought I could even pay for his travel expenses, since it would be great to have her best friend at the wedding. She denied, saying that it would take a lot of work to bring him, and she wanted it to be a family event. Countless times, she mentioned that James was like family to her, so I insisted. She got annoyed and said, I didn't even tell him we were engaged. That took me by surprise. I tried to ask why, but she started stonewalling me, and I left her alone. After a couple of hours, I tried to ask her again why she hadn't told him we were engaged, and she still refused to tell me, and I admit my insecurity got the better of me. In the past, James had confessed he had feelings for her, which she turned down, and basically friend-zoned him. But by the way she told me, it always sounded like she had him as a backup, something not only me, but her exes realized. She married him online. They always made their WoW characters look like a couple, like wearing the same transmog and stuff like that. When she had a fight with her exes, he was always there for her, and so on. I told her that made me uncomfortable, and if she was not planning to tell him, she might as well consider herself single, because I would not marry someone who couldn't be honest. Yes, I was pretty immature, but she did something even more immature. She texted him while showing me her phone something like, "Hey, just so you know, I was engaged, but not anymore," and sent it to him. I told her to pack her things and leave my house. Ever since she left, she has been calling me, but I refused to answer. My mom called me and said that I was an asshole for ending things for such a ridiculous thing. So, AITA? Update. Hey guys, I just got home after talking to my, still, ex-fiancé, and since a lot of people asked for an update, here it is. But I want to clarify a few things. As commented on my original post, I pay for the house since I bought it before dating her, and I asked her to move in since it was close to her job. I work from home since I'm in tech, but she had to go to work. That's why I paid for her car, to help her commute, and honestly, her salary is I was her partner, so I didn't see any problem with that. I thought she was the one. Despite everything, she is smart, funny, we had chemistry, but I felt betrayed. To the update. We met at a coffee shop on the premise we would discuss how to save our relationship, at least that's what she thought. As soon as we sat down, I asked to see their messages. She got defensive immediately, and told me she had deleted everything. I asked to see her phone anyway. She started to cry, ugly cry, asking me to stop. At that point, I had already decided I was not going to be part of the relationship anymore, but damn, I was curious. It took a good 20 minutes for her to hand me her phone, a lot of crying, even a waitress asking her if she was okay. So I read the messages. There wasn't any cheating like being exchanged, them professing their love for each other, but what I read still stung. There was a lot of shit talking about me. A lot. Texts and texts of them saying how terrible of a person I was, criticizing my hobbies, I like video games and pro wrestling, saying I wasn't a real man because of them and stuff like that. But there were two topics that caught my eye. One where she had told him I was having trouble getting hard, and that was frustrating for her. And one where she was complaining about how she didn't want to be stuck in our relationship. Yes, I was having problems in bed, because I was sad because my father had passed away 6 months ago, and the stuck thing. I remember telling her that when we got married, if she wanted she could leave her job, and I would provide for both of us. I don't know if she took this the wrong way, but I guess it was related to that. I honestly don't know. By the time I gave her the phone back, she was already giving excuses on why she was saying those things to him, how he was like a therapist for her, and then she asked me, "Don't you complain about me to your friends?" And I simply replied, "No, I don't." She started crying again. I took a pretty deep breath and just said, "Just give me the ring back." I didn't have the ring with me, like some suggested. She hesitated a bit but gave it to me anyway. I stood up and asked her to delete my number and to not bother me anymore. I called her mum and asked her to pick up her daughter's stuff at my place. Her mum is a good person. I'm just realizing I'm going to miss her as I write this. She understood why I decided to end it, but she didn't ask much. And to be honest, I'm glad she didn't. As for my mum, I didn't call her. I just blocked her for things unrelated to this post. I just realized she never had my back in anything. I was always trying to save an already failed mom-son relationship. Before I leave, I just want to clarify. I was never against her having male friends, or any type of friends. People are going to cheat, friends or no friends. I remember my dad saying something to me when I was a teenager. He always said, "Opportunity makes the thief," but I do not agree with that. Anyway, since I have the next 2 weeks off work, I'm going to figure out what to do with the wedding money, drink some booze, play games, and watch Monday Night Raw later. Edit. A couple of people are asking about the car. It is a 2015 Nissan Versa, which she crashed 2 times. Both times she rear-ended someone. I never liked the car, weak engine, the interior feels cheap and overall bad, so for all I care, she can keep that piece of shit. I would have more luck throwing it off a cliff than selling it. Edit 2. Little update. Her mom called me a few hours ago to check on me and to ask when she could come and pick up X's stuff. We spoke about the car, and she basically forbade me to let her daughter keep the car because 1. I paid for it. 2. X wouldn't be able to maintain it, so I'm going to keep the car until I'm able to sell it. God help me. Also, some people called the story fake because they said I wasn't a real man for playing games, and yet they played WoW. To be honest, that's on me because I wasn't very clear. The real man thing was more about the pro wrestling hobby than the gaming hobby, but in some messages, they clearly mocked me for playing some games. Life is Strange series. In one, I remember James saying something like, "How could a grown-ass man play such a girly game and cry?" Yes, I cried playing Life is Strange. I also cried to RDR2. The I'm Afraid cutscene still makes me emotional. I'm a crybaby, I guess. Also, I want to thank everyone who messaged me to talk about wrestling and games. It really helped me take my mind off everything. I haven't replied to everyone, but I intend to. If anything happens, I'll let you guys know. Be good people. OP is not an AH for breaking off the engagement. His fiancée emotionally disrespected him and belittled him in front of his friends, which cannot be justified. Partners are supposed to respect one another and stand for each other, but there is nothing like this. So, OP's fiancée is an AH here, and I would rate her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. And OP is not in the wrong, so he would get 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Several-Lobster 3237. My fiancé is considering breaking off our engagement, revealing the lack of compatibility in our relationship. I, 28F, and my fiancé, 29M, have been engaged for 3 months and dating for 2.5 years. Everything was going great, and we were very happy, but recently we started having some issues. We are not having a wedding ceremony, mainly because we want to start having children soon and don't want to spend that kind of money. Both of our families live abroad, so it would be very expensive to fly everyone out and reserve it for our down payment on our house. We decided to buy a house together, and after that get legally married and start our family once we get settled. This is where the issues came. I come from a family of farmers, the fruits and vegetables kind, not the animal type, from both sides of my family. But my parents are not farmers. My dream has always been to have a farm, for personal use, not as a job, but my fiancé doesn't want that, and I accepted that. However, one thing that is non-negotiable for me is my chickens. I have 10 chickens, and he knows that. So when house hunting, I was looking for a house with a decent backyard to be able to raise them freely as they do in the house I'm renting for now. He started getting distant and avoiding me after I told him I planned to bring my chickens to our new house, but I didn't put two and two together until I asked him a week later. After a week of being avoided, I decided to go to his house to talk things out this past Saturday. I asked him what was wrong with him, and he said that he thought I would get rid of my chickens before moving together, and that's why he was putting up with it. But that he didn't want chickens in our house, and that it was making him reconsider our relationship, because in his words, he didn't want someone who came with a package and then asked me to get rid of my chickens. This made me extremely angry, and I admit that I lost it. I started hysterically crying and told him that my chickens were more important to me than our relationship. Not true at all, I said this without thinking, in a state of panic. So if he was not willing to accept that my chickens are coming with me, then we were done. I got in my car and went home, where I spent the whole day crying. He tried calling me, and I did not pick up because I didn't want to say more things I didn't mean, which I told him in a message. On Sunday, I was feeling better and decided to call him, and we agreed to meet for coffee that same afternoon to talk about it. I started by apologizing about what I told him, and I told him it was not how I felt at all, to which he told me that he knew I didn't mean it, and that he didn't hold it against me. I decided to be honest with him, and told him about the farm thing, how it was my life dream, and that it affected me, not being able to have this when we could well afford it. We are both engineers and have decent salaries, and he wouldn't need to do anything on it. I was honest about how I was not aware of the impact this had on me until he asked me to get rid of my chickens, which, as weird as it may sound, I love like my own children, ultimately asking me to get rid of the last piece of my childhood dream, and how that just set me off. He said I was being selfish and that he needed some time to think because he was not sure if this is how he wanted his life to be from now on, which I accepted, though, being honest, I don't understand. I talked to my best friend about this, and she told me to just give up the farm thing, insinuating I was in the wrong, but, I assume, not wanting to directly tell me. I and my fiancé have not talked after that, and I'm giving him the space to think about our situation. Am I really in the wrong here? I genuinely do not understand why this is such a big deal, and I feel like he really must not love me as much as I thought he did, if he doesn't want my dreams to come true, and it's eating me alive. Any advice is appreciated, but please don't be too harsh. Update. Hello, I wanted to give an update to my post since a lot has happened in a week, and honestly, I need to get it off my chest. I also wanted to thank everyone for giving their thoughts on the situation and taking the time to respond. I guess this does not come as a surprise to anyone, I included, but we broke up. There is a lot more to the story than what I knew, and honestly, I am still trying to process everything that has happened. After almost a week of no contact, he called me on Friday and told me he wanted to talk to me as soon as possible. So I told him to wait for me in my house, and I would go there once I was done with work. I got home at 9 p.m., and I found him drunk on my couch crying while hugging his dog. Why was his dog in my house? I had no clue either. By the time I got home, he was way too drunk to have a conversation with me, so I put him to sleep and decided we would talk the next day. I woke up first, so I started cleaning the kitchen, which he made a mess trying to find any alcohol. But at some point, he came in, looked at me straight in the eyes, and told me, "I'm moving to New York. We are over," before even saying good morning. After that, he tried to leave, but I grabbed him and asked him to explain himself. We talked, and he finally explained himself. He told me how before everything happened, he thought about living on a farm, and how the more he thought about it, the more he liked it, and that he was thinking about suggesting it to me again. After he said that there was no way he could live that way, and to just forget about it. After that, he told me everything that has been happening recently. Apparently, a day before he started ignoring me, his boss told him that there was a vacancy in a role he could take in the main office in New York. He was working in a branch in our city, and he asked for a day to think about it, but he really wanted to take it. He talked to his mom about it, and she told him that it was good, and that we both could move to New York together and start there as a new family. After that, he decided to call my best friend, IDKY, and she told him that I would never approve of moving to New York, and he shouldn't even suggest it because I would get mad, that he should either move alone or reject the job, but not tell me. This makes me sound horrible, but I swear I can communicate. I do not know why she says that. After that, he called his mom again and told her that he was moving to New York alone and breaking off our engagement. And his mom told him that it was a horrible idea and that he should just reject the offer because he was getting old and needed to start a family soon. Mind you, this man is pushing 30 and still doing everything his mom tells him, so of course he decided to do just that. The next day, he rejected the offer, and that's when he started ignoring me. During the week he was ignoring me, he thought about everything and decided that the best idea was to make me sacrifice things too, until he didn't feel bad about rejecting the job offer anymore. So everything started with asking me to get rid of the chickens. He called me selfish because he gave up a lot for me, but I wasn't willing to give up my pets for him. Mind you, I did not know he had rejected the job offer, and he asked for time to think about our engagement because he didn't feel better about anything after telling me to give up something. And he had to think about how far he should go to feel better about rejecting the job offer, or if he would feel better at all after I gave up almost everything for him. So basically, the chickens were never an issue. He was just trying to make me feel miserable because he was. On Friday, he came to the conclusion that he did not hold enough power over me to make me give up everything for him, finally. So he decided to just move to New York alone and break up with me. He contacted his boss to ask if the job offer was still valid, but after 2 weeks, it obviously wasn't. But there was a lower position available, worse than his current job, and since he had already made up his mind, he just took it. That's when he called me and told me he needed to talk to me ASAP. He went home, picked up his dog, too big to bring to an apartment, so he's just getting rid of it by giving it to me, said by him, and came to my house to drink everything I had in my home. After telling me all of this, he decided it was an amazing idea to ask for the ring back, but after everything he said, there's no way I was not selling it and taking the money. That's the situation we are in now. He left after that, and obviously left the dog in my house. This weekend was hard. It's weird to go from engaged to single, but it's better to break it off now than when I have given up everything for him, and we have children stuck in the middle of everything. I'm also trying to figure out whether my best friend is really my best friend or not. I did not go into detail, but this bitch dragged me through the mud to my ex. But that's another story. I also contacted my boss today and asked if there was any possibility of working from home full-time. I currently work from home 4 days a week and go to the office on Friday, and it might be possible in a few months, so I'm very excited to move further away from the city and getting my dream farm. Hopefully I find a farm man to build my dream farm and a big family with ha. But for now, I am focusing on myself and my chickens, and I am going to buy a coop like those in movies with seats for each one of them that look like a little house, because after all this, I feel like I deserve it. Anyways, I am doing better than I expected. And I am loving having his Saint Bernard in my house. It makes it feel a lot fuller, and I love it. I don't know if anyone wanted an update, but that's it. Hope you enjoy. If anyone has any tips on how to get over all of this, let me know. OP's fiancé's reaction of breaking off the engagement shows poor communication and lack of compatibility. OP is not an AH here. She is justified in pursuing her dreams to maintain her identity. OP's fiancé is an AH here, a big AH. So, I would like to rate OP's fiancé 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from pass-house-2508. AITA for being disgusted and just saying okay when my fiancé broke up with me. I, 28F, had been with my fiancé, Alex 34, since 2020. We met at a friend's party, hit it off, and had been together ever since. He finished his doctorate in economics just last year. Since then, he has been working at the uni. I have my master's in media sciences and decided to start working instead of going for a PhD. Okay, so the problem is that Alex broke up with me last Monday. It was literally so surreal and honestly just weird. For the past few months, he'd been acting strange. He was making demands and then dropping them immediately. A few examples. He told me we were going to paint our walls back from dark green to white. When I asked why, he just said, "For f***'s sake, forget it," and never brought it up again, even when I asked. Another time, he came home and got mad because I was sitting on the couch with my head covered in a blanket. I had cramps. He was upset because I was just sitting there watching Netflix. Mind you, the house was spotless. When I tried to talk about it, he said, "Forget it, it's not a big deal." This kind of thing became common. Every time I tried to communicate, tried to figure out what was going on, whether it was something I did, or maybe he was just stressed at work, he would just say everything was fine. But he was clearly seething with rage. I didn't even have to do anything. He would find something to complain about. The apartment, clothes, me, work, etc. So, I gave him space, which apparently was also wrong. I told him I was going to help my parents with repairs for a few days, and somehow that was also wrong because he wanted to renovate the apartment too. Then, on Monday, I got a text saying we needed to talk. I knew what was coming, and after the last few months, I had made peace with it. When I came home, he was sitting on the couch. He didn't even wait for me to take off my jacket before saying, "I want to break up." Then the verbal diarrhea started. He told me he resented me. First, because I didn't pursue my academic career further, even though I was capable, and he didn't want to upset me at the time. Then, when I started making more money, since he didn't make much as a PhD student, he felt like I should have the last word financially, and he hated it. Mind you, I never said anything like, "It's my money, so I have the final say." That's a rule he imposed on himself, and he hated it. He said he hated our paint scheme, the couch, and even our f***ing crockpot. Then, he told me he had rejected a better PhD program to stay here because I had already started my job by the time he got the acceptance letters. Only, he never told me he had even applied overseas. He said a few months ago, he checked in with a friend who's in that program, saw how they were thriving, and decided I ruined his life. He said I had too much control over his life, and that he hated the idea that I could just decide not to pay for things and f*** him over. I honestly don't even know what that means. He also said he hated that all his friends loved me and didn't let him vent about me. Then he said again, "I'm done." I was floored. I had already made peace with the idea that we were ending, and it hurt, but after that rant, I was just disgusted. I looked at him, probably with a disgusted expression, and said, "Okay." He lost it. He said this is exactly what he meant, that it was horrible. We had been together for 4 years, and all I had to say was okay to our breakup? I just asked if he wanted to stay here while he figured out where to go. He said, "Typical, of course you're holding the apartment over me," and started ranting again, so I just left. I told my parents, and they're also confused. My dad suggested I reach out to our landlord and explain the situation to see what options I have. I can keep paying the rent no problem myself. He covered the utilities and some subscriptions. Just to reiterate, I never had a problem with this. I saw that he was chasing his dream, and that was more important to me than a 50-50 financial split. I make good money and am happy at my job. I never saw it as slaving away. I always had the mentality that my money was our money because we were building a life together. Of course, I had my own savings and fun money, but I honestly never cared. As long as I felt he was working towards something and wasn't taking advantage of me, I was fine with it. More than fine. Alex is still mad. He's going between texting me like a robot about the logistics of the split to being a seething asshole complaining about everything. I'm not even hurt anymore. I just feel nauseated by him at this point. I don't know. Should I have reacted differently? Edit. Thank you for all your opinions. It was nice to get this off my chest, LOL. Just to clarify though, I don't feel like a victim. I feel like something happened, and my relationship just turned bad. He behaved like an asshole, but that is the extent of it. Very clearly, something is going on, but he doesn't want me to be part of whatever it is, and I have to respect that. Now I just have to detangle myself legally from him, and after that, I'll just be left alone with my ugly green wall color. I think I might also adopt a cat, as my ex was really allergic. OP is not an a-hole, and she handled the breakup with killer maturity. Her boyfriend is being unreasonable by placing all the blame on OP without reason. In fact, he is a narcissistic and mentally ill person who doesn't respect individual freedom. He just wants to control OP, which now seems impossible to him, especially after she started earning a lot more than him. That's why he is behaving this way. So, OP's boyfriend is the a-hole here, and I would rate him 2.5 out of 5 on the a-hole scale, while OP gets nothing. Let's now jump onto the next story from Rude-Armadillo-5210. AITA for kicking my mill out of my car and calling her evil, instead of taking her to see my grieving wife. 31M here. The last few days have been a nightmare to say the least. My wife Stephanie had a stillbirth about a week ago, and we lost our first child, a baby boy. Stephanie isn't well at all. The doctors have told her time and time again that it wasn't her fault, but she feels guilty and responsible. She cries all the time and isn't herself at all. I'm worried sick about her, and just want her to feel better as soon as possible. My parents actually live close by, and my mom has been a huge help. My mom has tried to comfort Stephanie and assure her it wasn't her fault, which I really appreciate. Stephanie's mom lives on the other side of the country, and their relationship has always confused me. Stephanie's mom loves her, but she verbally lashes out and can be downright vicious. For example, my MIL told Stephanie in her early 20s that no respectable guy was ever going to marry her because of all the men she slept with. She'd only been with 2 guys before we met LMAO. She also called Stephanie used goods and easy when we first moved in together because she didn't approve of her daughter living with a man outside of wedlock. When Stephanie got pregnant, her mom told her she should quit her job, she's an attorney, so she can be there for our child. Stephanie planned on going back to work, and her mom said she's going to be a horrible mother. These are only a few of the comments she's made over the years, but I'm sure you get the picture. Some other context is that my MIL has 4 kids, and Stephanie is the only one on decent terms with her. I think Stephanie feels obligated to be there for her mom and take care of her because she's very loyal. I've told Stephanie I don't like the way her mother treats her, and she says it's just how she is and that she accepts it. She says the comments don't bother her because she knows her mom is crazy, but she's always stressed before her mom comes to town and is always happy when she leaves. My MIL offered to fly out to visit Stephanie and help support her after the stillbirth. I thought it sounded like a terrible idea, but Stephanie said she wanted to see her mother. I picked my MIL up from the airport this morning when she landed. As soon as she got in the car, my MIL said she knew this was going to happen. I asked what she meant, and she said she told Stephanie that she shouldn't be on her feet all day when she's so pregnant. I started explaining that the doctors said it wasn't something she did wrong, and my MIL said it was the stress of her job and her being in court all day. She said that next time I get her pregnant, I need to be a man and persuade her to stay home and rest. She said I was greedy and cared more about having 2 incomes than my children having their mother at home. She also said I wasn't a real man and failed to protect my wife and child. I typically am good at keeping my emotions in check, but I lost it. I pulled the car over and told my MIL to get out of the car. I also called her evil and said she's no longer welcome in my home because of how she treats my wife. I explained that Stephanie has been through hell, is vulnerable right now, and doesn't need anything other than unconditional love and support. My ML says she loves Stephanie, which is why she wants to make sure she learns from her mistakes and never goes through this again. I told my ML to get out again, and she called me useless and got out of my car. When I got home, I told Stephanie that her mother said some cruel things, and I lost my temper and kicked her out of the car. Stephanie asked what she said, and I purposefully left out the comments that suggested the stillbirth was her fault. I didn't want my wife to hear those comments, so I focused on the things she said about me, not being greedy and failing to protect her. The funny thing is that Stephanie doesn't get angry at her mom for saying horrible things to her, but she doesn't tolerate any negative comments towards me. She's told her mother in the past that if she continued to insult me, she can't have a relationship with her. Stephanie apologized for her mom's behavior and acknowledged that her mom shouldn't have said those things. She says she understands why I lost my temper, but I can tell she's stressed and disappointed her mom isn't there to support her. She's tried calling her mom to see where she is, but both of us have been blocked. This is a common tactic for her. I got a call from my mom saying that my MIL is now at her and my dad's house. She said that my MIL won't tell her what happened, but that she's very upset that she can't be there for Stephanie. My mom basically said she doesn't care what happened, and the right thing to do is for me to go over and make things right. She says that Stephanie needs her mother, and I should fix things with my MIL for her sake. She also said that Stephanie has been through enough without me and her mother fighting. My mom thinks my MIL is nuts, but she doesn't know about all the horrible things she's said to my wife over the years. I'm going to go over tomorrow morning, but to be honest, I don't want the woman in my house or around my wife. I want to protect Stephanie, and I think keeping her mom away may be the best way to do that. AITA? OP is not an a-hole for standing up for his grieving wife. OP's mother-in-law is a very selfish and toxic lady who blames her daughter for the stillbirth. It is unfortunate that OP's wife still wants her mom's support, despite the fact that her cruel behavior makes her presence more harmful than helpful. OP is certainly not an a-hole, and I would rate him 0 out of 5 on the a-hole scale. As for his mother-in-law, she is a cruel a-hole, and I would rate her 2.5 out of 5 on the a-hole scale. Let's now move on to the next story from com-distribution 369. AITA. For telling my stepdaughter that if she stays home from school, she needs to go to her mother's? This makes me sound like a witch, I realize that. And maybe this is selfish, who knows? Anyways, I have been with my husband for 4 years, and we have 7 kids combined. We both came into the relationship with 3 kids each, and we now have a 5-month-old together. They all live with us full-time and go to their respective other parents' homes every second weekend. Here's the issue. For the past 3 weeks, there's been a rotating sickness in our home, and I am the one taking care of everyone else while sick as a dog myself. I'm exhausted, barely running on 4 hours of sleep a night between the baby breastfeeding and one or more of the kids getting up in the middle of the night for water, Tylenol, or having coughing fits. At least 3 days a week for the past 2 weeks, 1 or 2 of the kids have been staying home battling this illness. And again, I'm the one managing it, despite being sick and exhausted myself. My husband works from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. most nights, truck driver. The only one that this sickness has not touched is my 12-year-old stepdaughter, Hannah. She never gets sick, her immune system is a tank. But she was getting irritated because she's the only one who hasn't been able to skip school. I told her she's not skipping school for no reason, and the other kids have been sick. It's not like they are playing hooky for shits and giggles. Either way, she asked her dad the night before last if she could stay home the next day because her mouth hurts. She has a tiny canker sore. He said yes. I was already pissed off because it wasn't discussed with me, and it's me having to deal with it. And I'm just frustrated at this point, because I want to take a nap with the baby, catch up on my own sleep, and take care of myself, but can't, because everyone's rotating staying home. Anyways, she stays home. I get everyone on the bus, time ranging from 6:10 to 8:30, and go back indoors, and Hannah is immediately up my asking me what I'm cooking her for breakfast. I tell her to have cereal. She whines, doesn't want cereal. She wants a full breakfast, eggs, toast, hash browns, sausage, and pancakes. I say no. She gets pissed and storms off to her room and slams the door. I go get the baby back down to sleep. I don't know. From 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. she came into the nursery 9 times, waking up the baby, being loud, pushing my arm, her way of being playful, asking me to bring her shopping for her upcoming dance, asking me to bring her to the mall so she can spend her money, asking me to go watch her cook because she's starving. She did eat breakfast, but she bored eats. ADHD and won't touch the stove unless I'm right there because she's scared. By 3 p.m., when I had to get the kids off the bus, I was fuming. The baby was screaming bloody because Hannah hadn't let the baby sleep more than 30 minutes all day, between her whining, being loud, and slamming her bedroom door after I had told her not to yet another let's go shopping request. Anyways, by the time my husband came home, I was done. I have never been so infuriated, honestly. So, when she comes in later that night and asks her dad if she can stay home again because her mouth hurts so bad, and he said yes, I snapped and said, "Okay, better call your mother and go there then." My husband asked why we would do that, and I gave him the rundown. The other kids are respectful and let the baby sleep. Hannah made sure to keep the baby awake because she wanted to go shopping and thought that since the baby was awake anyways, that I would just bring her. I'm not watching a fake sick kid who stays home from school again and keeps the baby up all day long again. She can go to her mom's. Anyways, she told her dad that I clearly hate her, and now my husband has been giving me the 5th degree for making his daughter feel like an outcast. OP is not an AH, and her suggestion to Hannah was practical because managing 7 kids, a newborn, and making elaborate breakfasts is not a piece of cake. Here, OP's stepdaughter's behavior is not justifiable, whether he doesn't understand or doesn't want to understand. Whatever the case, OP is not an AH here, and I would give her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. It is the responsibility of OP's husband to communicate things clearly when he has such a large family. And here is one suggestion for OP's husband. Dude, 7 children are more than enough. Just stop it. Now is the time to move on to the next story from Villainous Vogue. AITA, for telling my girlfriend that her tradewife ambitions are disrespectful to me and our relationship. My girlfriend and I have been dating for over 2 years. When we met, she was just starting college slightly late, and I had just graduated with my undergrad. She's been great, wonderful company in my life, and I appreciate the time we spend together. I had income, and she didn't. I also had a car, and she didn't. I have had no problems picking her up to see her, and I have not had any problem essentially paying for everything over the course of our entire relationship. I get her gifts, often for no reason, not because I expect anything but because I love her, and it makes me happy to see her happy. A few weeks ago, she finally got a car due to her uncle and parents. I was excited and mentioned how great it'll be for her to start driving to my place instead of me going back and forth wasting gas. But she then mentioned no, that I would still be doing all the driving because she doesn't want to waste miles. I told her I felt that was inconsiderate, and she practically told me I will be fine because I make good income to replace my own car. This honestly really turned me off, but I brushed it off and have since stopped bringing it up. Another topic propped up when she sent me a TikTok with one of those trade wives, and I mentioned while the video was beautiful, these videos kind of lie to a bunch of young women advertising a lifestyle that is unrealistic for people to achieve. She responded to me saying, "Women are just marrying the wrong men." Honestly, this made me livid. She then mentioned that if I'm not willing to pay all of her bills and allow her to not work, even without kids, then she is scared for our future. Now, I have always been an advocate for SAHPs. I think a homemaker is a beautiful task, but I don't think a lazy house mistress is attractive in the slightest. She has always loved being spoiled and treated. I enjoy doing this, and have done it for 2 years. Even then, she still cited me as one of those 50-50ths people, even though I have quite literally been carrying our relationship from the jump effort-wise, and financially. When I try and communicate our vision for the future, and all she has to say back to me, a woman should never pay anything for a man, I honestly hurt the hell out of me, because I give to her out of love and sheer passion of making this relationship work as it needs to at the moment, and instantly made me feel like she doesn't truly love me back at all, but rather views me, and all men, as a vessel for a rich trophy wife lifestyle, instead of someone she truly wants to see happy and succeed. I haven't been able to have a normal conversation with her since, especially since I was the one that had to apologize at the end of the conversation, despite her being totally unrealistic with her expectations, and on top of that, she doesn't even realize how much her words offended me after she explicitly told me a rich guy who can pay for everything is always the better option. I also know for a fact that her mother reinforces this mentality to her whenever we argue, that she could find someone richer and better rather than just working it out with me and compromising. She got especially mad at me when I said I may never achieve that level of fortune. Even then, why would I waste years of hard work so you can be lazy, especially in this economy? I have a very successful family business and a degree in a field in which I work part-time. But I am still no moneybags despite having it better than most. I still have things to pay for and things I want to achieve before I can realistically start trying to have a trophy wife. Even then, why does she expect my love to be so shallow? I want a partner, not a child to take care of. I don't want a partner that views relationships as some superficial class exchange. I told her just because I may need her help in the future doesn't mean she won't have my full support. I have always supported her. We have 2 happy years together to cite. But anytime I communicate this with her, she doesn't want to work it out. She wants me to be delusional with her. I feel like I ended up with the female version of Andrew Tate out of the blue. The shit she spews is incredibly misogynistic. Women are not built to be working. Feminism ruined our way of life. I can't find out a way to show her how ridiculous she sounds when she expects these types of things out of me. And for me, a very far left-leaning guy, to adapt to suddenly believing a woman's worth is tied behind the man she is. It's so gross. She knows who I am, how much I make, and what I am capable of. Yet she is practically telling me in my face that none of it matters until things are as she states. I find it very discouraging that I would sacrifice so much for her over 2 years, only for her to say she won't in any type of way sacrifice for me, simply because women don't do that. That's how they get screwed over. So, AITA for challenging this mentality? Update. I really appreciate the comments. To answer questions I saw pop up often. She is a little over 2 years into nursing school. In the business my family runs, she can instantly have a good-paying job through us. She doesn't want to do this. In fact, she often tells me she's only in school to get it out of the way. She has no current passion for going through with it. I don't even know how her progress is really going, as she doesn't talk about her studies often. Understandable. Whenever we speak about careers, cue the house girlfriend talk. She had told me once she will consider part-time. It took a very long discussion for us to get there, and says the money will be hers, and I will still pay 100% bills and outings. In terms of what she provides? Not very much, but I do not expect that. I help run a business and work part-time in a completely different field remotely, and she is in school. We only have time to see one another on the weekends, usually me picking her up, taking her on dates. We both invite one another to friend outings, family outings, etc. We do not live with one another. I am paying the mortgage on a duplex alongside my brother. No, she is not cooking and cleaning for me. I pay for the food, and more so view her as a special guest when she's around. And I'm 99% sure we are both content with our life as is. Whenever we talk about moving in with one another, we clash on this very topic, as it can be kind of dumb to have someone move in with no reasonable way to financially contribute. We aren't planning kids for another 5 to 10 years. People are stating that I should tell her to find a man that suits her needs. I did point to ask her, why not just leave me and find a rich man? She did not take that well, and insinuated I am painting her as a bad person. She left the conversation saying that it was an attempt to break up, even though it was just me trying to reasonably communicate. For those wondering if I'm in it because she is pretty enough to get away with that? No, she is gorgeous and incredibly fashionable, inspiring me in many ways. Fashion is one thing we bond over heavily, and we both equally care about our physical appearance. But in no way am I shallow enough to solely date her because she is physically attractive. No doubt she has her options, but honestly, I find it ridiculous that a healthy, happy relationship only needs a pretty face and a large wallet. Her opinion on that, I'd say ambiguous, because just as any other woman, she takes pride in beauty. I will speak with her on the phone later tonight about this topic, and again, and how it makes me feel, and update again if anyone is interested. Again, thanks for the responses. OP is not an AH for being frustrated with his girlfriend's unrealistic expectations. She is living in a world of dreams. OP's girlfriend's refusal to compromise, dismissiveness towards her boyfriend's future goals, and expectation for him to continuously provide for her are beyond understanding. Every action of OP is justifiable, and none of OP's girlfriends. So, OP is not an AH, and I would rate him 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. On the other hand, OP's girlfriend is a big AH and deserves at least 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Conmen. AITA for telling my girlfriend that she should go back to work if she doesn't want to take care of our baby. My fiancé, 24F, and I, 28M, welcomed a baby 5 months ago. My work offers 4 months of paid parental leave, and I added another month of PTO on top of it, giving me 5 months to bond with the baby and help as much as I could. We also decided that she would stay home for a 1.5 years since we don't want to send the baby to daycare at such a young age. So for the time being, I'm paying for everything entirely, which is fine as I make more than enough. During the last 5 months, I have been completely invested in the baby. She is not a night person, so at night I pretty much took care of him. She goes to bed around 9 p.m. and I take care of him from that time until 5 a.m. This doesn't mean I stay up until 5, just that if he wakes up and needs something, I take care of it. At 5 a.m., she takes over the responsibility. By 9 a.m., I would again take over from her so she can sleep a little bit more. She loves her sleep. We did this for the whole 5 months I was off. During the day, we also shared the responsibility when I was off. I changed him, bathed him, and fed him as much as she did. At the same time, I made dinner every night, washed the dishes, and even cleaned the house sometimes. She hates doing any of that stuff. We used to have a cleaning lady, but I stopped paying for it since my bills are much higher now. I was okay with doing most of the work since I figured she just gave birth after a long pregnancy, and it was my turn to put in some work. However, now I am back at work, but I feel like she still expects me to do everything. I work from home, so it doesn't feel like I have gone back to work, and she expects the same level of involvement I had. We agreed that I would take care of the baby until 3 p.m. now, instead of 5, which is very late for me since I have to be up and running by 9. She still expects me to cook lunch and dinner, do the dishes. What bothers me the most is that she also expects me to take care of the baby during the day as much as she does. She will just come into my office and hand me the baby, saying it's my turn. Because I spend a lot of time at night with the baby, I think the baby prefers me to hold him when he's sleepy, so she will just bring him to me when he's fussy and wanting to sleep. This is making it hard for me to concentrate. I tried telling her that I can't do everything I was doing before going back to work, but her argument is that I can't expect her to deal with him by herself for 8 hours straight. Mind you, that's the reason she's staying home in the first place. So I told her that if she doesn't want to take care of him during the day, then she should go back to work, and we can send the baby to daycare. I can't do all of it at once, making the money, and at the same time cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the baby. Now she is telling lies to her mom that I am not helping her enough with the baby. Am I the asshole? OP is not an AH, and he gone above and beyond in the last 5 months to help her fiancé take care of the child. Rather's OP's wife is being an AH for her unrealistic expectations. She is being fainéant, and she is an AH here, and I would rate her 2 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets 0. The last story for this video, Sis from Street-Load. 8151. AITA, for telling my daughter, I know what's best for my granddaughter. I, 55F, have been raising my daughter Sarah's, 34F child for the past 16 years. Emma, 16F, is an amazing young woman who has made me incredibly proud. For some background info, Sarah got pregnant at the beginning of her freshman year of college at age 18. She decided to keep the baby. She was still living at home, so of course, I helped her. My daughter wasn't really a present mother. She, despite my urging her to take time off, went back to school a week after giving birth and went back to work a week after that. She pumped so I could bottle and formula feed Emma immediately after birth. Sarah wouldn't get up in the night to take care of Emma because she needed her sleep, so I did all the night feedings and changings. Emma was left home with me while Sarah went to school and work and attended everything I needed to attend. Sarah would come home and care for Emma for an hour or two, then go to bed. When Emma was 2, Sarah and her boyfriend got a small apartment closer to campus, and I assumed that my time raising Emma was over. Sarah was putting Emma in daycare for about 3 weeks before she asked to just leave Emma with me during the weekdays and take her on the weekends. So until Emma was 6, she spent Monday through Thursday with me and spent the weekends with Sarah and her dad, who was in and out of the picture. When Emma was 6, Sarah moved back into my house and took a slightly more present role, but it was obvious she didn't know what she was doing. She didn't care to follow the routine Emma and I had set years before, and couldn't understand why Emma was struggling. She knew very little about Emma's likes and dislikes, and didn't have much knowledge about raising children to begin with. Within a few months, she stopped making nearly as much of an effort, and I took back over as the main caretaker of Emma. When Emma was 8, Sarah moved back out with a new boyfriend, this time leaving Emma with me entirely and only coming to get her on the weekends. She took a job that worked weekends and nights, and for 5 years, Emma lived with me full-time, only spending nights with her mom in the form of sleepovers and an occasional weekend. When Emma was 13, my daughter got a job with a 9-to-5 schedule and started picking her up after sports and activities to spend the evening and having Emma come over on weekends. A year ago, my daughter moved into a house that is in the neighborhood of a very prestigious private school for girls. Emma is now 16 and has gone to the same school since kindergarten and has just started her junior year. Last week, during a family dinner at my house, my daughter announced to the family, myself, Emma, Sarah, my 3 sons, my Dills, my other grandkids, that she was so grateful for the help I've given her with Emma. But since she was doing so well, it was time to take her back. Emma would be going to live with her full time. She'd be enrolling her in the private school, and it was all possible thanks to me. I asked if I could speak to her privately, and she said no. So at the table, I told her that that wasn't a good idea, and that it wasn't going to be good for Emma. She loved her whole life with me. Taking her away would be damaging. Sarah said that I had no right to tell her what's best for Emma since she's her mother. I told her that being a mother doesn't mean she raised her daughter, and that I know what's best for Emma. Sarah left in a huff and told me she'd come back to discuss the details, but then called me later, yelling at me for undermining her parenting, saying I had no right to say that, and that I was stepping on her toes. After my daughter left, my sons told me that while I was in the right, I should have been more sensitive to Sarah. I really don't think she deserved any more sensitivity. Sarah chose a career over raising her daughter. Nobody pushed her to keep a baby, and nobody pushed her to pursue her career. And even when school and work permitted, she continued to put very little effort into Emma. My daughter never actually tried to bond with Emma as a parent should. She never took an interest in her life beyond her allergies and soccer schedule. They don't talk despite Emma spending years trying to connect with her. She cannot answer any basic questions about Emma and treats her like a small child, rather than the young adult she is. I did all of the child rearing. I raised her as my own baby. She grew up in my home just like my own children did years before her. She's had constant stability with me, and it's unfair for her mother to come in 16 years too late and decide she knows best. Decide to remove her from the home she's lived in since birth, away from the school and friends she's had since kindergarten. Remove her from the person who raised her. My daughter is extremely mad at me and is accusing me of turning her daughter against her because Emma refuses to go with her. AITA? For some background, Sarah was never an addict or anything. She was just very career-driven. I never held anything over her head, forced her to move out or in, and I always stepped back when she wanted to be more involved. I've never spoken badly about Sarah to Emma, but Emma has always been upset about the fact that Sarah has always made so little of an effort to be a part of her life. Her father is not in the picture, and my husband has passed on. Posting here because I need advice from people separate from the situation. This is my first time on Reddit. I apologize for any mistakes. Edit to add, Emma does not want to go with Sarah. She has expressed to me and both her private and family therapist that she doesn't consider Sarah a mother and doesn't want to have that kind of relationship with her anymore. Emma has struggled for years, not understanding why her mom doesn't want her and why her cousins don't have the same thing. She has a very tense relationship with her mother, and despite Sarah's recent attempts, she very rarely spends time with her mother willingly. Edit 2. There was never any legal work done regarding Emma. My daughter doesn't pay child support, and there are no court orders as far as who has her when. It's always been when it was convenient for my daughter. Also, the reason Emma's feelings weren't brought up till the edit is that if she had wanted to go with her mom, there wouldn't be a reason for me to post. She'd have just gone with her mom. OP is not an AH for showing the mirror to her daughter Sarah, who left her daughter just after birth with OP, and is now claiming her daughter back. If we exclude legality, it is best for Emma to stay with her grandmother instead of her mother, and if she moves, it would affect her stability and well-being. Sarah is being a little bit of an AH here, so I would give her a 1 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets 0. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose. Bye bye, see you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.